Welcome everybody to the member spotlight, and this is going to be a special one. So Rich was an OG. He was one of the first members to join the program. He has renewed and continued to be in the program for over 3 years. And Rich's transformation from who he was when he started to who he is now is nothing short of remarkable. So for anyone who wants to change their health, their lifestyle, their mindset, and their results, Rich's story is going to really inspire you to show that it's possible to do this really at any age. Um, and Rich doesn't look it, but 57, dude, is that did I get
That's
that right?
right. That's right.
57. Think about that. So he came into this thing, 3 years ago, and since joining, Rich lost 50 pounds. He became the number one seller at his company for 2 years in a row, selling software at Brightcove, and he saved up enough and did well enough where now he is running his own business full time and just left last month to do that full time and became one of our coaches as a way to continue to support the community. So, Rich, I'm gonna pass it to you because your story is just insane. I'd love to just start it by you sharing like who you were coming in, like what was life like for you 3 years ago when you came in here, just for context for everybody.
Cool. Yeah. First, thanks for the nice intro, Ian. Appreciate it. It's funny. As we put this on the calendar, I went back and was prepping for it. One of the ways that I did that was looked at my initial intake form for guys like Brian and the guys on the call that or the people on the call that I'm mentoring and coaching with right now. You're all too familiar with that intake form, right? Everyone here is, for that matter. And so this intake form was 3 years ago, and just going back and reading it kind of made me uncomfortable. It's just that it just kind of validates the growth that this program and all the mindset stuff and just fundamentally as a human, as a person, has impacted me. So I'm just so excited to kind of share with the community here, which is now kind of a very pivotal key part of my journey, how that happened and kind of the aha moments and some of the things that came along with it. But kind of going back to that intake form, it was 3 years ago, and there's been so much that has happened over these past 3 years that has been kind of tied to and part of this journey, and you, Ian, too. So thank you for helping lead and drive. But if I were to sum it up in a nutshell, I felt, going back and reading that intake form, it felt shallow in the sense of how, I was thinking about my life and my career and my family and how I was perceiving it. You mentioned I'm 57 years old. So it's like I'm literally in the back half of my career. And I 3 years ago was struggling with where that was going, which prompted me to reach in and reach out to Ian and start coaching with him. But I guess an accurate way to describe it, I felt, from a career perspective, which, as we all know, transcends across all of the rest of our lives, our personal life, our family life, our how we think, our habits. But I think I felt like an inch deep and a mile wide. Everything I did, it was from everything seemed to be reactive. And if you go back and look at that form, that's how it read. It just read like I was not focused. I was not scattered. I was scattered, and I wasn't I wasn't prioritizing myself. So, but taking a step back, by and large, I had what was a successful sales career. I was number one in several companies. I excelled, but through all that, my habits sucked. They were terrible, and there were signs of that over the course of my journey that were flashing red lights that I just didn't recognize or didn't have the kind of mentality to see and, more importantly, address. One of them was kind of that, Ian talks a lot about his origin story and his roller coaster, episode where he was turned upside down, saw his life, kind of flash in front of him. I had something similar, but just to kind of show you how my mind was, I didn't take time and address it. I just moved on. And at the time, it was about 10 years ago. I was running a $70 million business at Adobe. And it was after the holidays. I was running through SFO to CES. So it was early January, right after the holidays. I was late. I was, running through Terminal 2. I can still feel it. And my body just stopped. I collapsed. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I just thought I was done. And so I came to, and as you can probably imagine, people were around me, and it was just this experience that I'll never forget. And because of that, I went on a leave. So Adobe, fantastic, supported me in every way, but was never able to ever figure out what was wrong. So I went through tests, I went through angioplasties, I went through everything. I saw it, but never was able to find out what was wrong. So fast forward, so I come off medical leave, jump back into sales, and start the same old bad habits. Running hard, selling on planes, not taking care of my body, not taking care of my mind. Making numbers, doing well, but never addressing kind of the real kind of foundation of what was wrong. So as I did that over those next 2, 3, 4 years, it just again, it took its toll, and finally to a point where I transitioned to another role because the Adobe thing, there was just this negative connotation with this going on leave, so I was dealing with that. I wasn't mentally strong to get through that. So I transitioned jobs, and I was essentially job hopping because I was looking for answers, and and wasn't finding them. So fast forward, 2 years, I was at Salesforce, doing well, knocking down numbers, starting a gaming vertical with a strat group at Salesforce. Ironically, I had a couple of Ian's old accounts, which I was able to kind of see his work and what he was doing, which was kind of fast forwarded to me reaching out to him. But that said, I was still dealing with the same shit. So and when I say that, I mean grinding, not just professionally, but mentally, personally, everything. I just felt like I was grinding, and we know how that goes. When you do that, at least when I was doing it, other areas of your life lack, and you procrastinate, and you don't prioritize, and do all those things. And I finally just had enough, and I wasn't making my quotas. I missed my quota for 3 years, and as much as I kind of preface this with my challenges, I was making my numbers. I'm an Enneagram 8, so I'm an achiever and a challenger. So I mean, there was no way I was not going to make numbers. So, but it took a big toll. Um, so I share all that because that was my life before I met Ian and before I started coaching here. And it's been the journey over these past 3 years has been transformational, not just from a career perspective of not feeling broken, but the growth that I've been able to capture and harness and build a part of my life. Everything transcends the professional life because my health is better, my family relationship is better, and more importantly, my relationship with myself is better. So I'm looking, I was super excited to share this journey, at least pieces of it. I don't want to sit here and preach. I'm looking forward to Q&A, but at the same point, I just want to, thanks Ian for giving me the chance to say, okay, this was Rich before we met.
I appreciate that. What changes did you make? I want to like dive a little more into
Yeah,
what changed for you, what clicked, what happened because there's a lot of people can relate to the grind,
yeah,
to the job hopping, to
yeah,
feeling like you're lost.
yeah. I think, and I'll bucket into I'll bucket it into kind of two sections or two pieces. One, the actual professional, the sales stuff, the mindset and the habits. Um, being able to value the notion of an RGA and consciously realize and associate it with time value. So, one of the exercises we did really early on, Ian, was, we broke down, I had the best year of my career in 24. And so we broke down what my hourly rate was and applied that to everything. So if I'm sitting there looking at ESPN on my phone, am I getting my hourly rate? And the answer was obviously an emphatic no. So it's, things like that really were impactful as it became clear about how I wanted to go about my day, my quarter, my year, and my job. But uplifting from that, that's just an example. There's the 12-week year, there's POV alignment. I could talk to all that stuff as we go through this, but kind of the overarching piece for me was, the biggest change was really aligning with my why. I think one of the things that I like to, I've said a couple times, and for those of you who've been at masterminds, you've heard me say this, is like, I came to Ian to get better and make my number and get my sales acumen back and get my mojo back and not feel broken professionally. Um, and what came out of that, the outcome of that was everything but sales. I mean, it was mindset, it was habits, and what I mean by that is really aligning with my true why. Because went back and again, referring back to my intake form, my goal was I wanted to make $1 million. I saw him do it. I wanted to do that. That was what I thought was my why. And as we went through the mindset and the habits modules and kind of really understanding that, my why is really crystal clear now, and it's not making $1 million. Ironically, because I was focused on the things that I value, important to me, the money came, the success came, but being in it, it's hard to really kind of think through that and understand it. So
What is your why now?
yeah, my why is yeah, it gets real personal, but I'll so my why my why is personal and financial freedom, and that means a lot of different things. Personal freedom was just being aligned with having the time and the mindset to be aligned with my faith, my finances, my family, and my future. My 4 Fs is what I call them. So when I'm aligned with my 4 Fs, everything tends to flow, and it breaks down challenges that I'm having. It breaks down that procrastination barrier. So I find myself often thinking about that when I'm literally just this past week, and you mentioned I'm building a new company. So I'm spread really thin and doing a lot of different things, and I've felt literally overwhelmed, and kind of going back to those days when I could very easily pivot into reactive mode, overwhelm mode, but being able to have the mindset and to be able to recognize it, step back and readjust, it's huge. It's everything. And then so the second half of my why is super. Those are things for me. The 4 Fs. My wife is a first grade teacher. Love her dearly. She works her butt off. She works harder than I do now. But I need to retire her, and that's a second part of my why. I want her to be the part of this company we're building, and to do that, I need to retire her. So I will retire her inside 2 years. Call it accountability here. So that's part of my why. So that overlays to what I'm doing with the business and where I need to be in the business and how I go about getting to the numbers where we can do that. The third one is I'll share it. It's being better than my dad, and that's hard to say. But I know a lot of people on this call have this they're working through, and have similars. It may not be their dad, it may be another family member, and we've heard a lot of these stories over the mastermind retreats and all that. But he made a lot of fundamental mistakes, and jeopardize who I will not make those mistakes, and I will be a loyal, loving husband, driven in faith and driven in in doing the right things. So you combine those three, those are my why. It's not one thing. It's not how, I mean, throw it back at you, Ian. How different is that than making $1 million? So when you think about think, I do affirmations. I have those. I have those whys front and center. I'm able to recall them all the time, and it fundamentally changes how you think about things and go about your day to day. So
Yeah.
that would be the biggest. That would be the biggest change, Ian. But then we can get into the tactical stuff on sales and deals and all that. There's some things too, but the overarching one was that.
I think you're hitting a really important point. I mean, I do this every day. I have my mission statement, my person statement. I have my affirmations. I work on it every single year, and it's because you change, and what got you here is not going to get you to the next level, right? What got you at 25 years old into sales isn't going to get you at 35 when you have a kid and starting a family, through the grind. You have to have something deeper. What you mentioned was not being like your father. That's deeply personal to do things differently, to be a different type of husband and partner. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that every day you can anchor to, right?
Absolutely.
It's very, I mean, you and I work closely together, but this is the stuff that matters is your own purpose that's gonna drive you, because it's not the tactics, it's the drive, it's the daily discipline and your habits. I mean, when I think of you, I just think of habits. I think of transforming your habits, your health, your drinking, and reducing that was a huge part of it. Your affirmations, your 12-week year execution. It's like a man on a mission. And when you're on a mission, you accomplish what you're setting out to do because of how you're showing up. So I think it's the person you became and how you operated that made you, because I've gotten to witness this very closely for 3 years. It's that daily operating rhythm. I want to open it up to the group in a second, but can you just talk about kind of your daily operating rhythm a little more? Because I think that is what makes you so successful in how you run your day and how you run your life.
Yeah, and it's especially important now that I've got, I'm not locked into week, I'm running my own company. So it's super important to focus on, I time block. I mean, my calendar is my to-do list. So I found that kind of going through the program, and then I was with Brightcove, super, super important. To the point where I'm up early. I'm an early riser anyway. So, I don't necessarily believe you have to get up at 5 o'clock to do this stuff, but I do, just because that's the way my body works. So I'm up early and I sweat every morning. Um, that means different things, but I need to sweat. I need to move every morning, and have coffee and breakfast with my wife every morning. She's a teacher, like I mentioned, so she leaves at 6:45. So that requires me getting up early. When she leaves, I have a ritual where I, either journal, I do something for myself for the next 30 minutes, shower, get in, do whatever I need to do, and then my day starts at 8. So I've got those 5 hours to really, focus. If I know I have to do something on the personal side, I try to get it done during that time after Michelle leaves, but um, it really forces me to, you know, get the potential distractions done, so I can really focus on what I need to do during the day. And as I mentioned, I time block. So it's one of the biggest takeaways tactically that Ian's program and what he taught me is that it's you may not get it all done, but at least it gives you an opportunity to work on it and then reschedule for the rest of it to get it. I do that very, very religiously. And from a personal side, the growth side, I have a strong faith. I believe in God. I host a Bible study every Monday night. So there's some planning that goes into that, and I time block for that. So and I find that if I don't do that, I get back into that reactive, overwhelmed feeling of losing control. So it gives me the ability to own, manage, and kind of lead my life, because if I'm not leading, no one else can do that. So especially as I spin up this business. So it becomes super important to time block and to do all that. The kind of the value of RGAs as it kind of an extension of the time blocking stuff. Um, I didn't even think of it as RGAs. It came intuitively early in my career, but when you start thinking of, I need to pipeline, I need to build pipeline, I need to build a POV, I need to do this, I need to do that. When you start scheduling that, it becomes really clear on, shit, I didn't do that. I didn't put enough time to this. I need to think about it differently and do all that. So kind of the whole notion of RGAs, I call them, CGAs now, company, company or CBAs, company building activities. So, but the same concept, right? I mean, if I'm not doing that and allocating time to acquiring customers, investors, and dealing with builders and all that kind of stuff, I get overwhelmed and lose my control. So that's super meaningful to me.
Hmm.
And then again, the POV. I want to mention this one thing too. It's like the when you asked about an aha moment. So I think the why, kind of really understanding my why was my personal habit aha moment. The other aha moment as it relates to the curriculum and what we're doing and what we all signed up for is that in the first 6 months, I had Netflix was an account of mine. We had no footprint in Netflix. And for those of you who don't know, Brightcove is a online streaming platform. So it's the nirvana of an account. So if there's any account in a digital media company to go get that streams content, it's Netflix. So I was able to establish this relationship and get in for a small opportunity. It wasn't $1 million opportunity, but a small one, and get Netflix as a logo was huge. So what I worked with Ian on was this whole notion of, yeah, we can go pitch, but we need to develop, a POV, and we need to develop it's very specific to what the problems we're solving. And we all know this to a certain extent, but the whole notion of, we use the TransUnion model again, the proposal model as the use case for that. And what it really focused me to do was to go look at the account and align it with their initiatives, what we can do, but interview these people and not sell them, talk to them, interview them. And if they didn't want to provide information, that who can, I'm trying to help you guys, and this is what we're trying to do. So this whole notion of interviewing instead of pitching, instead of discovery, instead of all that, it just changed for me. It built relationships. It became a different motion of selling. And that was a real fundamental aha moment for me. Whereas if I can go back and look at my career and like, shit, if I could have just interviewed this person, the whole feel, the whole trajectory of a sales cycle really could have changed. So the next couple of years, last year in 2020, 2023, I really focused on that in terms of my discovery, in terms of meetings, in terms of executive level engagement. I interviewed. I didn't pitch. I interviewed and had discussions, and it really was impactful. So that was a big takeaway.
I'm gonna share this, and we're gonna open it up now. But what Rich is talking about is in mindset, and we're gonna be doing this right now. We're in mindset. We're starting. We're gonna work on the why. We're gonna work on intention. But he's talking about shifting from an inward to an outward focused mindset, and the philosophy is simple. It's approach each customer with the intention of understanding whether you can help them solve a problem or achieve a goal, rather than the intention of selling a product or service. The intention is to understand and see whether you can help them solve a problem or achieve a goal. And that's a conversation, and there's no selling. It's literally just trying to be curious and understand. And that is 10x more effective than going in with pitching. It just is. And customers can feel it. And Rich, you did that really beautifully. And again, got to number one 2 years in a row. So what I'd like to do now is, again, you guys have a unique opportunity to all get coaching from Rich, to understand what he does, how he does it, and get support. So we're going to open it up to Q&A for the second half of this call. I see one question right now in the chat, but I want everyone to lean on Rich as much as you can because he's got gold for you. So first question is Greg. He just said there's a lot of people who want to go into business and use sales as a launch pad to start their own business. And Greg says, I'd love to hear more about your jump from SaaS sales into owning a business, how you saw the risk and how you finally pulled the trigger. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Ian, we can attack this together because Ian was very much a part of this. So after being number one in 2023, just take a step back. Thanks, Greg. Good question. I've always wanted to go into business myself. I just never had enough guts to do it. So and I think that guts, when I say guts, I mean mindset. I just never was in. I always thought I had to have X dollars in the bank, and yeah, that's important. But I just never felt good enough, i.e., personally as well as on the resume, to do that. If I was my personal opinion, and Ian and I aligned this a lot. He was number one at Salesforce for a couple years running, and that was important to him to build a coaching business. It was super important for me, just mentally, to go out on top. And if I wasn't on top, I didn't earn the right to start my own business. That's how I thought about it. So although that's not part of my why now, it certainly was a part of my why, over the first 2 years of coaching. And as I came into year 3, that became a part of our coaching. It's like, okay, you're number one. Let's do it again. So you feel good about leaving, not only from a financial perspective, yes, that helps, but an accomplishment perspective. I like to say, I tell people I'm retiring from tech, and I'm doing that because I've checked all the boxes and I've done everything that I think I could do there, and I've always wanted to start my own company. So the answer to your question is the mindset is important, but the tactical pieces of aligning and putting a plan together. Ian and I met back in November for a day. I talked him into giving me a day, and he did. So I flew to El Segundo, and we spent a day planning what these next 6 months would look like. And so an answer to that question is a plan and actionable stuff associated with that plan. So when you do transition, you're not feeling overwhelmed, and you're ahead of the game, and you've got momentum, and you've got relationships built, and you have an idea of what you're going to do. So there's that, and I think that's a I don't know, high level answer to your question, because there's lots of tactical stuff that fall underneath that. But one, have a plan, and two, have double down on that plan, and you do 2 jobs while you're transitioning. Really lean into it and do it. I spent 8 to 10 o'clock. I mentioned I start my day at 8, so I would spend 8 to 10 o'clock every single morning working on my future business, and then time blocking from 10 to 5 or whatever it was that day on my regular gig. So I made it a part of me before it actually transitions. That was a big piece, and that eliminated a lot of stress. That eliminated a lot of kind of a lot of uncertainty, because starting a business and moving on from a paycheck, there's a lot of uncertainty that goes along with that. So it eliminated a lot of that. It made me feel real good about doing it.
There's two.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely did. The only other question I have is, willing to share any details on what the business is? You got me curious now.
Yeah, sure. It's a luxury real estate. So
Awesome.
It's RMLH Ventures. It stands for some people say it's Rich McGrew. It's actually Rich and Michelle, my wife. RM Luxury Homes, and there's 2 revenue lines to it. One is building custom homes. I've got 2 going on right now in the Bay Area, and the other piece of it is a private equity backed second vacation home business, where we're acquiring and building properties in our investors are able to use those as vacation homes.
Awesome. Congrats and best of luck.
Private equity based thing. It's a 7-year term, so it's very different than building homes, but super cool, super fun.
Congrats. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Greg, I'll add, you can burn a boat or you can build a bridge, right? My philosophy and Rich's philosophy is build a bridge, right? I did the same thing when I was at Salesforce. I was working from 9 to 4 and then from 8 to 9 coaching, from 4 to 6, building the infrastructure for Untap so that you can prove it out and then make sure, that it's not just irresponsible and I'm just gonna throw everything away. So we both kind of followed that same philosophy. But you got to do it while you're working if you really want to do it right. It's not going to happen on its own. Let's take some more questions. I see a few in the chat. Christina is asking, what were the red flags you ignored, I guess, before Untap that you didn't really feel like were red flags in the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Just honestly, I drank too much. And looking back on it, stress was a trigger for that, and and food was a trigger for that. So, case in point, the airport, scene that I shared, that was a direct result of not being able to manage stress, not being able to, not eating well. I was 50 pounds heavier back then. And I had bad habits. I didn't think of health, that I didn't relate health to being successful. So I think that those, just at a core, those changed my life. Stop drinking, eating healthy, exercising, sweating every day, even if it's just a little bit, and focusing on and realigning with my why. That's why I'm here. I honestly think 10 years, I was on a bad path. I was on a path that, like, I'm 58. If I would continue down that path, I'd be in jeopardy. It was bad, but it wasn't drugs. It was just a fundamental mindset and health issue that wasn't going to get any better. It wasn't going to improve my life if I didn't make changes. And I didn't realize that until, several years ago.
Did being at the Mastermind in Austin have an effect there? Because we went pretty deep in that movie theater. I was just curious if that was like, because you were talking about drinking back then and and just like it kind of all hit that day.
It did, and it was such a small, intimate group that that landed, that hit hard too. So it was, so that was pivotal. That was the catalyst to, okay, there's something else out there that I need to address and fix and get better at. But you mentioned the mastermind, Ian. So for those of you who haven't attended and have a gold membership, attend. Those are worth gold. Even if you're silver, whatever, just go. They are worth gold. The people, the relationships that you establish, the people that you meet, and the kind of the feeling taken away from those masterminds is really impactful. It's really powerful. And one of the I think it was last April, Ian, the one at Arrowhead, where you did, you kind of walked us through. I think it was on the heels of Mike and Christie's and Elise's kind of embodiment around abundance and all that type of stuff. And we envisioned stuff. You walked us through this exercise, and it was really impactful. And what I was thinking about this as I was prepping too, I'm sitting here smiling. What I envisioned over that whole process, just the going back to planning and envisioning and feeling, those things are happening right now. I envisioned, I envisioned building these homes with these builders and acquiring these properties and doing all that. And I felt them. They're happening, like literally. I envisioned what these homes looked like. And I worked with architects to build those visions, and they're being built right now. So that's the type of stuff that around mindset, around, that are so much more important than um, than the day to day. If you can, and that translates to our professional lives too. I mean, I envisioned starting this company, a year and a half before it even became reality. And so, we can do that with our personal lives. We can do it with relationships. We can do it with, things that we want to improve on. We can envision ourselves being 50 pounds lighter, all those types of things. It's just so important. So those masterminds are super key. And thank you for, kind of setting them up the way you do that. Ian. It's freaking awesome.
I just put it in the chat too, for anybody who missed the mastermind that's a gold or platinum member. They're recorded, and I put a link to the recording there. You can see the visualization exercise that Rich is referring to, where we imagine the year from now and the life we're living. And it's extremely powerful because your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. And when you see it,
Yeah, we got to coach it. We got to coach our minds.
you got to see it before it happens, right? You got to feel the emotions of it happening. Then you want it. It's like no turning back. So appreciate you calling that forward. Next question in the chat is from Rick Hansen. So Rick asked, he loves the interviewing versus selling. How did you get the audience to do the interviews? A point of view? Did you have to iterate on the point of view when it didn't stick the first time? Did you ever have to pause that your point of view had to be right the first time or you wouldn't get another chance? Like, did you hesitate about that? What did you do to earn the right to do the interviews, really, is what?
Yeah, that's super important. So one of the key parts of these interviews is I either record them if they're not in person, or I actually write quotes down. So I'll actually, I'll use an example with the Netflix. So Christine was my main point of contact, and I said, listen, if we're gonna get this done, I need access to, who was the executive producer of this particular piece of business. And here's what I'm gonna ask of her. So I would include our main point of contact to help me get those meetings. And so they knew what they were going on. They were part of the process. But in those meetings or in those interviews, I literally would take quotes. I go, can I quote that down? Can I write that down? And when I would go back and build our POV, I would recall those quotes. I said, whatever that is, as it related to the project, related to the initiative, and it made it personal, and it absolutely differentiated from any other company or any other rep that was in there trying to get their business. So as we would go through the sales cycle, I would refer back to a quote very often and say, are we aligning this? Have we changed? I would use their words as the opportunity to check a box or move forward. And when it came to kind of escalating and getting more alignment across the executive staff, it empowered them to do it, because they're looking, at least in this, in these, I can think of 3 other scenarios that I use that it led to promotions for them. It literally put their, strategic thinking kind of investment in their job or in the company or in the initiative front and center. I mean, it's a quote on a slide. So it really helped personalize and validate what we're doing. And to your point, Rick, if the quote was off, they're going to freaking tell you, because it's on a slide, it's their words. So it's a really good tool to really dial in a POV.
I think a POV is pretty complex, Rick, in general. If you want to look at it's actually prospecting the power. There's a whole section on how to build POVs, but the essence of any POV, and what Rich worked on and what I teach is, here's what you're trying to do as an organization. Here's your highest level goals with a quote from their CEO, COO, high level. This is where you're going. And then you share, here's all the challenges that we uncovered. And you can share some quotes on what's going on at the user level, at the experience level. And then you pivot to, here's how we're going to help, right? So it's, here's where you're trying to go. here's the obstacles or challenges that are preventing you from getting there, and here's how we're going to fill the gap and help you achieve it. And so it's this big contrast that you're introducing between their vision and their reality, that gap. And that's kind of the format, and the POV that you bring typically is to an executive and you share it. And a lot of times they're not aware of all the stuff going on at the ground level with their team, right? So it's a combination of, what you're learning from the users or lower levels, versus what the executives want to do. Their guiding light, their guiding principle, whether it's their values, whether it's an interview quote from their CEO, whether it's research. And honestly now, like, you can you can do that a lot faster with ChatGPT. The deep research and the pulling of sources and interviews is immediate. Whereas before it was a long process to go through and find all this stuff. And Rich and I were working together before. Some of the AI now is insanely advanced compared to even where it was a year ago. So that's the essence of it, is like, come with a strong point of view and then validate with them. The POV gets you permission to do the interviews. Okay. It doesn't have to be right. In fact, it hardly ever is. What initially—
It's better if it's wrong. It's actually better if it's wrong, because they correct it. They it has to be in the ballpark, but they'll take the opportunity to say no, 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 no. And their names are tied to this, so they'll take the opportunity to give you the right data.
On day zero, when you didn't know anybody at Netflix, what was the hook? What was the POV that said, "Yeah, I think I want to talk to this guy, Rich. I don't know who he is, but he said something that really got me thinking."
Yeah, on day zero, it was we I had to understand. I actually interviewed without interviewing. I didn't even think about this, but I used that as an opportunity. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because it was in their production studio environment. It was kind of out of our use case. So that being known, it was out of our use case. And I knew there was some custom services that needed to be involved, and there's no one out there that could have done it. So what do you need? I took that approach and said, and kind of use the services side to enable our technology. So it was from the very beginning, day zero, as you say, it was like, we're here to help you, and no one else is going to do it better than we are. So let's figure out what it is that you need, and then we can build it on. And 2 people got promoted out of that deal. So it was like, if you take it from that perspective rather than pitching your stuff, it's a very different tone, very different cycle.
My job is to help you succeed, period.
Exactly.
I'm here to make you successful. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? What's getting in the way? That is the approach that's going to make you a 1% seller. It is. And when you help others succeed, your success will always follow. And Rich lives that. I got a lot of questions flowing in the chat. So Cole's asking, did you ever catch yourself slipping back into those bad habits? If so, how did you combat that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We're all freaking human, right? So it's like it goes back to just being aware, because I was so unaware before. And a big piece of that is Ian mentioned it, is this affirmation and this being able to reflect and go back on your why, and adjust and pivot in the mindset of, it ain't bad, it just is. It's like, stuff happens, and it's a lot of times it's not your fault, it's not anyone's fault, it just happens. So how do you address it, adjust to it, and move on so it benefits you? But that takes time. It takes being able to understand what your true why is, and literally care about it, so you can adjust those bad habits. And have there been days where I haven't worked out, haven't sweat? Sure, absolutely. But I certainly catch it and be able to adjust and fix it. We're not perfect, but what I find is, if being aware of it and affirming, what your why is and what's important to you and what you love and what's bigger than you, really helps you go back and revisit and fix what needs to be adjusted.
Knowing who you are, Cole, and reminding yourself of that every day is been huge. It's been huge for Rich. It's been huge for me. And affirming it. This is who I am. I just redid my affirmation a couple weeks ago in a men's group, and what's come up for me recently is surrender and not being a control freak because there's so much input that's out of my control and it's very stressful. And so I say every single day, I am a man of unwavering faith and full surrender to God, leading my family unconditionally with my love, time, and presence so we stay unified and thrive. It's reminding me to surrender. It's reminding me to let go of control. It's reminding me to give my unconditional time, love, and presence to my family so we stay unified as a unit and thrive as a family. Like there's nothing more important. So when I get stressed with work, I can say that again and remember, like, hey, it's not the most important thing in the world. And that mindset is what actually helps you do really good at work because the pressure's off. You're not carrying a bunch of stress and cortisol in your operating system. So you can show up not caring as much. And when you don't care as much, you actually do a lot better because that energy is different, right? Versus the energy of neediness, right? The one who cares the least gets the most. It's interesting how that works. But it's not saying don't be passionate and don't serve. It just means like don't put all your worth in an outcome there because there's more important things. So you got to know what's important to you and affirm that every single day. And these habits don't creep in. It's like this is not me. I'm not leading my family unconditionally if I'm sitting on my phone scrolling instead of being with them. So that permeates and programs your subconscious when you have a strong affirmation. We're going to be working on this stuff together as a group, like deep, the why, the affirmations, the personal mission statements. This is all the stuff we're going to do in the coming weeks. So the timing on this is really perfect, Rich, that you're leaning into these things. I love Luis's question. Rich, now that you're living your vision, are you at peace? Is life more fun, or do you feel the negative grind creeping back in with your new business? So, did you run away from yourself, or are you feeling the peace that you once, thought you would having a business? I'm curious on that one.
I 100% feel the peace. I love what I'm doing, and it's because it's for me. It's for my family. It's for my future. So I yes, but that wouldn't that I know for a God-given fact that I would not be able to say that if I didn't plan for it for the past year and a half and have the mindset and have all this stuff that we're talking about be part of me now. So it's like. So it's been a journey. It's going to be an awesome journey, but yeah, I'm feeling the peace and loving what I'm doing. Thanks for asking.
Brian, I'm glad to hear that, Rich. It's really, really heartwarming to hear you're happy and at peace because I know it took a lot to get here. You're betting on yourself. There's always peace when you're betting on yourself, and there's peace that comes from being all in and giving your all. There's such a peace in knowing you've done your best. It's a peace of mind. So that's what I'm hearing from you. It's not like a piece of like everything's copacetic. You're working your butt off, but it's a peace of mind knowing that you're living an aligned life.
Yeah. And a part of that would go back to my earlier comments was it was super important to leave on top. And in a sports analogy as winning the Super Bowl as your last game. I felt like I did that. So that enabled the peace and the freedom to go do what I wanted to do.
Only Tom Brady had that philosophy with Tampa Bay. Brian Hinn, I've been told in the past that in order to be successful in enterprise sales, you need at least two of three things: territory, timing, and talent. Would love to hear your overall thoughts on this.
Territory, timing, and talent. Especially this came from Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually mentioned kind of leaned into this a little bit yesterday. Territory, timing, and talent. I'm thinking back to these past couple years around my territories, and we didn't have any strategic customers in my territory when I started. Netflix was not a customer. Yahoo was not a customer. Rogers was a customer, but they were a fraction of what they did. So I'm kind of thinking through all that. So I had a territory that was open, but I didn't have any installs to go sell into. So there's that. So territory, talent is, I think that's more mindset than anything. And timing, yeah, timing is important when it comes to initiatives and aligning POVs to what your product or what your platform or solution provides. But I think that that's our job to help and influence our customers to whatever it is, say cost drive revenue, whatever that is. So I think I'm not going to deny that those are important, but I built I think, and Ian, I'd love your take on this, but I built my business around not having it all three. At the beginning, I didn't have the talent. I mean, I had the talent, but I didn't have the mindset. I equate mindset to talent. So I think that just knowing your situation and looking at your open territory and how reliant you are on a third party. I think there's definitely value in what how you go about and get that book of business. We can talk about that later, but I think, I don't know, I'm stumbling through this because I go back to, it's all about how you perceive it and the attitude that you have going into it.
I'm going to jump in here, Rich.
Yeah, and let me collect my thoughts on that because it's a great question and it's true, but there's an undercurrent to it all.
I get this all.
I'm trying to articulate that.
I get this question all the time. I've answered it a million times. So I'm going to say what's true for me and what's true for the people that I've coached is that the best people who've had the highest success have had the worst territories. They've had the ones that have underperformed. They've had the ones where they were underdeveloped and they approached it with a fresh set of eyes. The ones that have said, this territory sucks, it's never done anything, of course it's going to suck because they're not all in with it. They're not committed, right? But the ones who said, wow, this is a gold mine, it's opportunity, no one's worked it, have crushed it. Territory does not matter. It matters to an extent of like, you can't have customers that are bankrupt that can't buy, right? If you have all bankrupt customers, yeah, that is a true fact. But for the most part, territory is how you approach it. It's what your philosophy is on the opportunity. If you see an opportunity and you think you have an opportunity, you're going to work that way. You're going to approach it that way and you're going to find the opportunities. It's something called law of attraction. It's genuinely like what you believe is what you achieve. And that's really important when it comes to territory. Timing, I will say, is important. Okay. But luck is where preparation meets hard work, right? So if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not prospecting, if you're not going after it, like you're not going to find the timing because you're going to miss the opportunities because you're not going to be in front of people. But yes, like my big deals, a lot of it, the timing was perfect. And I think that one, there's a lot of validity to it, but you got to be working every day, right? You literally, there's I think it's Picasso. I forgot the quote from Picasso, but it's like, opportunity will only find you when you're working, right? And that's really what it is. You have to be working to find the timing. And as far as talent, you develop talent with reps, with experience, and that comes from the habits and showing up. So yes, talent is critical, but talent can be developed with commitment, with practice, with dedication. That's why you guys here. Timing is reliant on you working every day and being consistent to find those opportunities. And territory really is about how you think about it and really going after it and not feeling defeated because you don't have a good territory. So I think it's a load of shit, frankly. Territory, timing, and talent. It really, whoever's telling you that is saying all of your success is out of your control. That's what they're saying. Timing out of your control, territory out of control, and talent, yeah, that's in your control. But if you're not born talented, well, maybe it's not. Like you can develop talent, you can build a territory that's and foster a territory if you put the work into it and have patience and show up every day. And timing, you have to be there to experience the lucky timing. So that's really for most people who say that, they're the ones who are looking at the external as to why they can't or can be successful versus the internal of making it happen wherever they go. I've seen the same people go to the worst territories and the worst assignments and continue to be successful because of their philosophy and how they show up. So this is one that I really feel passionate about because if it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? If it's meant, That's the bottom line. Like you have to do all you can. And if you're defeated before you start because of supposedly bad timing in your or a bad territory, like you're screwed. So it doesn't serve you to have that philosophy in general. It serves you to empower yourself with the right mindset to go out and crush wherever you are, even if it's something that other people could not do or a territory that historically hasn't produced. The top people in Salesforce, every single one of them, right? They closed big new logos that other people weren't able to do, right? And that was my experience with Berkshire Hathaway, for example. There was nothing there, and it was so undersold. And I met with someone he'd never met with Salesforce before, so it's like it was great timing because he was ready to go, but like none of the other reps got to him. So how does that work? All right, Rich.
Well
Any
said.
gather your
Yeah,
thoughts
well said.
there? And thank you,
Yeah,
Isaac.
well said. Yeah, well
Inspiration
said.
exists, but it has to find you working. That's what Isaac's inspiration exists, but it has to find you working.
Yeah, and the one thing out of those three that you control is talent. I mean, you are how good you are. You need to put in the work and do the work and get all that. But you've got the control over that. Timing and territory, those are subjective, but you make them go. So I would say that the talent piece is very controllable.
Yeah,
That's
talent can be developed through
exactly.
practice and through commitment and through mentorship, finding people like Rich,
Totally.
like me, that have done it and just following the playbook. Like the other two are out of your control to some extent. So you got to think about them the right way. Last question, and then we'll wrap. We've got 2 minutes. Michelle is asking, how did you know what you wanted to do once you retired from tech sales? Real estate sounds so interesting, but curious how you landed there.
Yeah, it's just personal. I've always loved it. I've always had this, I've done it over the past, I don't know, 15 years, a couple houses we redid. And so I've always had this itch to do it. And I always knew I wanted to do it. Like I said before, I just never had the guts to do it. And so, um, that's really the catalyst for it was, I know that's what I honestly know that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel it in my soul that I am supposed to be doing this. And because of this, all of this abundance is happening. Things are coming across. I mean, things are coming to me because I'm doing it. So it's really validating, empowering, and super fun. So to answer your question, Michelle, I just always knew I wanted to do this.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Rich, thank you for coming on, for sharing your story. It's so inspirational for me to see you at 50, 58, like making these changes, healthier than ever, dialed in, and like it's just the beginning for you. And that I think is just inspiring for anyone at any stage of their career. So thank you for setting the example. Thank you for serving our community. And there's so much more to come. You're going to get to speak at masterminds and coach so many new people coming in. So I'm excited to see this next chapter for you and to be part of it. So appreciate you so
Well,
much.
thank you. Thank you. I'm lit up. And it's just just to close, I mean, it's just, I'm a perfect example. It's just never too late to live your dream. So don't give up on it, man. Just continue to grow and continue to do what you do. So, and improve yourselves because it definitely pays off.
Love it, brother. All right, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week. Take care.